Hello, welcome to Mending Threads. This is your safe place and your stronghold for whole body wellness. This is a transformation series as we speak, and it's mind, body, and spirit. And we hope that we say something this morning that will help you heal the struggle that you are going through or take you to places that's designed for you so you can see the road that you're traveling. So today that I have with us on the Women's Resource Center in Mind and Faith Health Initiative, an individual who is active in the community and has done so much work to help to heal people. And I have had my eyes laid and able to see this. I'm going to bring on our guest today, who is Ms. Denise Caulfield, Executive Director of Wesley Foundation at University of Houston, and also appointed associate pastor of Riverside United Methodist Church here in Houston. She did her undergraduate work at Southern University. Now, these are just a few things about her. She's also a mental health coach, um, internationally certified, and she completed her bachelor's degree and her master's degree and at the Perkins School of Theology, receiving her master's. And then once she was appointed associate pastor, she received additional certifications to work with other pastors and persons in the area. And I'm not going to go through all of that. All I'm going to say is that we have before us a wise woman, a woman who actually are able to see things from the ground floor to the top floor. Okay, and this is how I see her: compassionate in her work and honest in delivering the message. So that's what I have for you, and I'm just going to introduce you formally to Ms. Denise Caulfield. Good morning this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Lewis. How are you?
Great, great. And I'm so glad that you could join us this morning on our topic. I don't see our topic, but I know that our topic was on women, and we're going to talk about women in all ways of healing. And I know that we can. There's some women in the Bible, women in our society, but we really want to get to the gist of that. But first, I want to find a little bit more about you, in terms of how did you get into this whole ministry, this whole arena? What brought you here?
Well, I tell you, I think it brought me to ministry. I didn't go by looking for it. I
Yes.
I grew up in church. I am a church rat. My
Mm-hmm.
parents were church rats, so we were definitely involved in community a whole lot as well. So combining the two, the community as well as church, is what I was brought up in, and so being active in what I am and where I was growing up as a child and as a young adult, that's where ministry captivated me in many ways. And so once I'll tell you this, and this is honest truth, I promise. I said, Lord, I will do anything you desire of me in the church, but don't ever make me a preacher because the demands of a minister are so great. And no one really knows unless you actually live it. And
Right.
so I got to I had the opportunity of being around many pastors growing up. And my oldest brother was a minister. And so from there, I said, that's not my forte, Lord. And we had that discussion for 12 years, Lord and I. And of course, God won. And so I received my call into ministry and said, well, Lord, whatever you desire.
Mhm.
I realized that there was nothing I can do to change his mind, God's mind. So I've learned how to take his lead.
So Pastor Caulfield, can you just explain a little bit that moment that you knew, the moment that you accepted? Like I have many moments where I just like, please, and then all of a sudden doors open and it just comes and it's something that says to you, you have to do this thing. I want to know what you can you share because people ask that all the time.
I'll tell you this, as strange as it may seem, is it, sitting in services or listening to ministries or in Bible studies. It was more than just sitting in there observing and listening and partially participating. I found myself in the midst of it all for many, many years. And and even I would dream about myself being in the pulpit, doing sermonettes initially. And look, I got to also back up. I had a fear of standing in front of crowds. I
Mm-hmm.
would get uptight-tongued and twisted. My mindset would go away. It was not until one Sunday the pastor was talking at my home church, and he was saying, you know, if you have a call in your life, or if God is instructing you to do something with your life, submit to it. It's better because and when he said that, I felt, oh God, I'm sinning against the Lord by not stepping up to what that call is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized it was something greater. So I had to go through the line of talking to my pastor and all my parents, my siblings. There are seven of us, and sharing what God had placed in my life. And gosh, I was in my mid 30s then, and so imagine 12 years of wrestling. And when I come to accept that call, there was a certain peace that came over my life,
Mm-hmm.
and that fear went out the window. It elevated me to another level, I think, of listening to what God was saying. Although I had still so much more to learn and still do,
Mm-hmm.
but I've learned to just take God's lead and allow God to just direct me wherever He needed me to go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. And so it's kind of like a letting go or giving in to the force, something like that. Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
exactly what it is. And most times, most folk know that there is a gift God has given you, and we all have gifts in some
Mm-hmm.
capacity.
In some
But
capacity.
but being able to say yes to those gifts because it could interfere with the norm that you're so accustomed doing. You may don't have time for that particular thing that your gift is calling you to do, or you just saying, look, you don't have time. You still have time for the other life, the secular life, the less
Mm-hmm.
stressful life, the things that you're more in tune to that will bring you more excitement and fun. And but
Mm-hmm.
yet, when that cold steps in on you, the
Mm-hmm.
excitement, just as Apostle Paul came, it wasn't one that you just say yes to. You finally look at it at going, let me take all of those gifts and those things that God has given me and turn them around and use them for His good. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how my journey began.
Mm-hmm.
Did I change? Pretty much, I did not. I still have the same personality that I do, but
Mm-hmm.
I do it for a different reason now and
Mm-hmm.
for a greater purpose. I guess that's a good way to
A
look at it,
greater purpose. Uh-huh. Other than just your own. Mm-hmm.
other than my
Other
own.
than just your own. So it's
Absolutely.
kind of like what we're talking about. They talk about women or mothers as people who do things. And so, we have the name of our organization is Women's Resource Center and incorporated, but it's for families.
Right.
So people, when we started it back then, it was just a big turmoil around AIDS and just a lot of different things. And so one of the things is that we talked about is that women tend to be those that unselfishly give of themselves for something that's bigger than themselves, be it their children or whatever. And I thought today, since Mother's Day is coming, since many churches for Mother's Day are really studying women in the Bible and how it really helps in our things. So I wanted to just open the topic up about women, mothers, and healing today and begin to see. I read, now I can't name that what it is, but they say that women chemically that we have something that's different than men. There's a name for it. And so, audience, next time I'm going to have the name for this. It's a chemical in our body that actually leads us to this giving, to this sharing and this healing.
Right.
Uh-huh. There's this name for that chemical. So someone at one of the churches shared that with me, the name, but I'm gonna have to look that up. Okay, again, to bring it back to this brain. So I wanted to ask you, what in that you are with the I want to get the right name, the Wesley Foundation at University of Houston. What do you all do there to help you mentor or young people? How do you help women there to deal with some of the difficulties, or young ladies, or however you do that? What do you teach them about
Well,
that?
actually, it's an extension ministry of the United Methodist Church. There are foundations that's located throughout many of the universities. It's an extension ministry for students that once they're leaving from high school and venturing off into college, what we really do is provide a safe place for those students to come. We continue to enhance their spiritual development, there to be a good ear, a safe place, and
Mhm.
letting them come and talk about the things that they're dealing with, uh, relationships, sexuality, homosexuality,
Mhm.
uh, balancing budgets, and just how to manage to be away from home from their parents.
Mhm.
So all of those type things is what I kind of offer my students along the way. And also because we are lodged in right in the heart of Third Ward community, I figured we're right there in a disparate area, and let's not ignore where we are located. And
Mhm.
so part of my project as well is to be active in the community and making a difference, merging the students along with the community and letting the community see what we do, and allowing the students see what community do, merging the two, bringing all
Right.
to with Christ
Mhm.
centered.
Mhm. Oh, that's really good. So that means that you're kind of like in the leadership role there, but also as part of the leadership mentoring what they already have. And so I was wondering, how we struggled through things in life. Do you remember who mentored you and what messages you received um, in order to know what you had to do, and what did you learn from them? Because sometimes we need to hear what other people have learned and how to even accept being a mentor.
Gosh, I want you to know, first of all, I had a huge family. There was seven of us, two boys and five girls, but then
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
huge. Then my mom had 11 siblings. And so we were all kind of connected around each other. You're talking about a serious community. It was a community. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but my grandparents, and also they lived near us, and having to be around them and watching how, even in their older age, still had a major impact on their siblings, their children rather. And I've never seen grown people gravitate so lovingly toward each other and support and what was going on in each of their lives. And that trickled down from my grandparents to my aunts and uncles, and then down to us from my mom and dad. See, my mom and dad were very active in community. We weren't one of those that was just sit at home, kind of at home. My mom and my dad, well, my father worked at a plant, one of the local plants in Louisiana. And but in addition to that, he was also the president of our community association.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time when we first started, moved into the neighborhood, open sewers, no street lights, no gravel, nothing. Many of the homes were less than worth living in. And somehow they got involved in community and turned things around with the lights,
Yeah.
finally street lights, closed sewer lines. Even a community park was built in our little two-street community called the Maryland. And then once my father retired, he started a food bank through our church, and it served the community of Scotlandville for many, many, many years. In fact, I think it's still going. And my mom was just right there with him as well, but more in the community as well. And she worked with many of the seniors there in the community,
Mm-hmm.
helping them to get social needs that they needed when we're not sure of how, or even were aware that they can get things, services done to improve their homes, or to provide medical services and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
there they were all the time doing something. And we caught the wave. We thought once we left home, we would reinvent our own lives and
Mm-hmm.
doing things that we thought was conducive for us. But we found ourselves involved in community the same way and as well in church. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Kind
not.
of, kind of the link, kind of. So you're becoming the peer to peer leader in the community connect was just a natural thing. We didn't have any idea, did we?
No, we did not.
Which
It's
is
just.
just what your mom and dad were doing. You see.
That's
Mm-hmm.
right. And everything we learned was by watching them in action. And so it became very clear that our role is community and in church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, another interesting story. While I was in seminary, I had to write this paper concerning community in Christ. And
Mm-hmm. Oh, that
there was
sounds interesting.
and it was quite interesting. And I struggled with writing for many years. Thank God I had someone to teach me how to do that. And, what you don't write papers in accounting, you just use the numbers. But
Yes.
I was blessed to have someone to help me to design my papers and lay them out and that it was a good flow. But I had to write this particular paper and I struggled with it. And I thought, I grew up in a neighborhood that they're talking about these very same things. The same bullets they want us to tap in. I was that person. I was part of that disparate community,
Right.
and so I used it. One of the one of gentlemen in our neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant man, very brilliant guy. But something happened along the way. We don't know, but he was in a mental crisis, and it deprived. He wind up being that street person everybody have in their community. He just existed, and that was his life.
You
But
mean just being on the street itself? Just seeing them on the street. Okay. Mm.
just on the street, the person you walk on the other side of the road when you see him coming, because he's loud, obnoxious, smelling very unpleasant smells about him. But yet he was part of the community. and,
Right.
and my mom gravitated toward him in many ways, making sure at least he was fed on a regular basis from the church project they were using. And they said, often when they were talking with him, they said, well, you need to find Jesus. God will lift you up and put you back together with in all your brokenness. But yet still defeating him. And look, this wasn't a microwave situation. This was many, many years,
Mm-hmm.
several decades. Um, this gentleman, my mom died. And when my dad died, then shortly 6 years later, my dad died. And this gentleman said, well, gosh, we don't have nobody to look after us any longer. And although there were still availabilities, but that constant source had gone. And but yet the food bank still went forward. They were began to seek other ways to help them. And so this gentleman became ill himself several years later and called my oldest brother in. And he said, I'm ready to give my life to Christ.
Oh wow.
And I said, what an awesome thing to talk about. And so that was a lesson learned for me as a minister is
Mm-hmm.
just because you plant a seed, it doesn't mean that seed is going to grow overnight.
Right.
You kill it and work it and water it for a definite indefinite period of time until God finds time for it to grow. And that's what happened with this man. And so I use that example in my paper to
Mm-hmm.
talk about ministry and
Yes.
how we have to place ourselves in a easy, comforting, stable mode because we don't know when God is going to move. We have to do our share, to do our part in community and planting those seeds and loving on those people. And you're thinking, and when you're helping them, you're finding out you're learning more about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
transitions that you need to make, and
Yes.
to change lives of others,
Yes.
regardless of where they are.
So I'm gonna share where you are because what you said about community,
Yeah,
and looking at how what goes on is a reflection of the community or in the community.
yeah,
So I can remember having this little nasty attitude around about 9 years old. I think I was maybe like in the third or fourth grade.
yeah.
And this man, such as the man that you're describing, lived in the neighborhood somewhere.
Mm,
Nobody really knew where he lived, but he was always in the neighborhood. And my mom was cooking dinner. She would always make us go do something for this man.
mm-hmm,
And I was like, why do you want to do this? Because he's smelly and he's this. And she said, he is the where he is because of people like us to where we are. So
mm,
he, and that he would not be where he is if somebody took a stand for him at some point in his life or now. Okay, so we must figure out how to take a stand for him. And
mm,
that stayed in my mind all the time. And always figuring out how can we take a stand for somebody that's just out there. You see, so what you're saying, what you're describing, is exactly it as well.
mm-hmm. That's so very true, and
Mhm.
the journey continues.
That's right. So of course we're going to want to know later on how did the gentleman fare. I guess I wanted to always know how he was helped to help someone else.
Hmm.
Did he, that kind of thing. But anyway, I want to know about this whole idea of if we could get started, just kind of talk about a few unique something in the Bible or women when we use as a guiding or people in the community. And I know that when I say I know, I hear that women in the community or leadership, maybe we could look at how they parallel or what it's about. And if you could just share some key women, I heard you speak at a Christmas event that we had. And I was really, there are different ways to look at everything. And I was just so it opened up my mind to really look at things in a different manner that could spur on critical thinking and really begin to understand more things that we could do in
Yeah,
our community, more things that we have to offer instead of just accepting the flat page. So I
absolutely.
just wanted to see what women would
Yeah,
you highlight as really affecting us now? That's
yeah,
really taking and what it meant.
yeah. Let me tell you something about the Bible. As a woman, I struggle. I struggle a lot with it because as I read so much about women in the Bible, women were not considered equal or less than a human being. I looked at it and I said, well, Lord, why did you allow these things to happen? But then I had to realize this is the things that we were taught. You see many. Look at Ruth. Look at Bathsheba. I remember in the Old Testament reading about Bathsheba in the Bible, and they called her a prostitute. She was not a prostitute. She was the woman that was raped. She
Hmm.
was the woman. She didn't volunteer to go see David. David summons her, and if a king calling on you, you're not going to argue with the king. You're going to go see
Right.
the king. What's going
Hmm.
on?
Hmm.
And so I was glad to see that perspective of a woman had changed. And when David screwed up, of course, we know he had Bathsheba's husband killed on the front line. And then,
Hmm.
of course, as an end result, the baby that he and Bathsheba had conceived died. But I also have to look at it one step further by having a good friend who can tell you about yourself when you're falling short.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan told David, king or no king, man,
Mm-hmm.
screwed up really bad.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go and repent of your sins. And David did. Although they did lose the baby, but still he got back in his right relationship with the Lord. Uh, and I see that along the line as women helping women.
Yes.
Don't pull each other down because of the status that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Way to lift each other up and be supportive of each other along the way. You know, my
Mm-hmm.
best friend and I have been, we were just last night saying, how long have we known each other? And it's been
Mm-hmm.
over 30 years. And both of us have had very difficult lives growing up. Growing up means maturing. Um, and we often talk about the things that we would share with each other, never condemning the stuff that we did, never putting each other down or putting a break or a wedge between each other, but just having those heart to heart conversations about what was going on, our mindsets, two headstrong women, with a lot of compassion for doing things in many ways, being inclusive of our spouses or non inclusive of our spouses, all those kind of things. And if we were falling short or doing something silly and stupid, but we thought, well, you may want to rethink certain things. Uh, and why? And it may create and did create oftentimes heavy discussions. But after
Mm-hmm.
we kind of settled and thought about the things, we said, Denise, you're right. Us, Sam, you're right. And then we thought, what if we, as two friends, could help somebody else? And that we did. And we formed a partnership with a friendship with several women and uh, just to talk about investments. That's what it started out as being, but it wind up having these heavy conversations about the things that women were involved in the abuse that comes out in relationships so often, or
Mm-hmm.
on a job working and you're not getting your just due, not just
Mm-hmm.
in the corporate America, but also in the religious arena.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are very real and very true, and how to avoid having to get caught up in the system, but allow yourself to grow with the systems and
Well,
making
now
it.
that's some key points there, Pastor Caulfield. So you have three things there: how to grow with the system, with what you believe in, how not to get caught up in there, and also how to listen
That's right.
to someone who's close to you.
That's right.
Okay, so maybe we could look at that to see some key points that you could share or make for women and what we've learned that would be helpful in that. Because we get it a lot of time. Even this morning, I got a lady that was so in turmoil that she attempted suicide.
Mm.
Um, because of things like this. And
Hmm.
so maybe if we talked about what to do, how to handle it, and look at that and how to listen.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing. One of my mentors in ministry, I won't call her name, but she has been such an instrument for me for many, many years. I've known her before she went in ministry, and I came on board several years, many years later into ministry. But I watched this woman, uh, married with kids, passion for ministry, just went over and above, in ministry because of the passion, the gifts that God had given to her.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, we became very close friends during the time I was unemployed, where she visited many sick folk in the church or in the community or funerals or forums we sat on, and just the dialogue that we had. I to what she was going through. And as we talked, a connection began to develop with us. And I said, well, you know what? The same things I'm seeing in corporate America is going on in your ministry. And how do you deal with it? She said, first, I have to place God in first in everything that I do, and she does even today. And secondly, she got her order, family order, the order of life, kind of from God to her family, to herself and her family, and then all the other systems that we are involved in, such as the memberships, the churches that we are part of, other
Mhm.
communities that we're part of. We had to categorize all those things, and of course there are times when situations may or crisis may appear where one of those things may require immediate need.
Mhm.
Somebody's hurting,
Yes.
a woman abused, a minister that's in church jeopardized. Her job is being jeopardized because she spoke her voice.
Mhm.
Things like those, and how to have allow them to have a safe place to come
Mhm.
and begin to have the conversations and to begin to help their wounds get healed. You can get burned out also with your own church.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
the wounded pastors all the time,
Mhm.
allowing them to step back and be a person again, not the person always in the hot seat, so to speak, but allow them to be the individual, to allow them to grieve, to allow them to say, I'm hurting, to allow them to say, I need help. And it doesn't make you less of a leader. I think the effectiveness
Mhm.
increases because now you're saying, I'm just like you, and,
Right.
and saying, how can I do better? Or how can I enhance? Or to bring in outside sources to work with you in getting things done. Um, I'm one that pushed mental health for a very long time. Um, Such a taboo still in the church, and it's okay to have somebody else to talk to. I keep a mental a person associate on hand with me all the time. I've had for several years going through a divorce. And I said, God, what was with that? After 22 years of marriage, why didn't it work? And why did I blame Denise for
Right.
everything that happened?
Mhm. Well,
And
women and people, even children. It could be a mother and father doing the same exact, but somehow
yeah,
the question is, it's right. The eyes are right on the mother
that every time.
every time.
Every time,
Mhm.
every time. That's exactly right. Every time it's always on the mother. I guess because we're the nurturer. I don't know
Mhm. Mhm.
that gift we have. Fathers most times are workers and absent
Mhm.
that nurturing thing that we do so
Mhm.
well.
But I
Uh,
also think with your story about the struggle, and that is so true with women leaders, especially in the church, that the stereotypes is
yeah,
that if they are become frustrated about something, they're just emotional, and now the women is coming out in them,
yeah,
or they're not able to handle things, or it's just a lot of stereotypical responses.
yeah,
And so then I find that women leaders tend to begin to respond many times, let me say react to other pressures in the church to avoid
yeah,
having that. So they go along to get along with some things. And to me, that's a lot of pain
yeah,
for them. And I have a lot of pastors and ministers and, deacons and bishops and whatever in my family. And I see that,
yeah.
you see, from many sides, from a family side and from the front side. And
Mhm.
that's just got to be out. When you earlier said that you said you didn't want to be, I knew not what I was begging him, don't do that to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because my head goes off
Yeah,
because God, could you imagine straddling
Yes.
all the time and having to keep a balance
Yes.
all the time?
Yes.
Hmm.
Very, 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 very much so. And women, we we often laugh about this. We don't have time to fall apart because we're trying to hold the family together,
Yes.
be it your personal family or your church family or other families that you've developed along the way. But we have to realize that we can't do it all. We're not God. We have to learn to say, I can only do so much.
Right.
And I had to learn how to say, I can only do so much. And so as I began that mental health journey for myself, it was an eye-opening experience for me in saying, you're okay. Because I didn't feel okay. And as I mentioned
Hmm.
earlier in the Bible, where as I read the Bible wasn't giving me a healthy view of women. You know, we went through so much in the Bible in order to please men. And then now look at us moving fast forward. I am not an advocate of abortions, but I am an advocate for pro life. You get to make your decisions.
Yes.
You know, no one is telling the men to do anything. They have to, you know, they're on the sidelines making all the decisions for us. Um,
Right.
so things have to constantly have more conversation. Nothing is black and white in this world, obviously,
Hmm.
but trying to find that safe place for you and helping other women to find that safe place for themselves um, in ministry or working in capacities that you work in shedding a new life and a new twist and giving a new hope. And
Hmm.
that's the things we're looking toward to say, I do love me, you know, and I'm okay with me. And
Hmm.
it takes a lot. And you probably, I can say this to you. Remember that old commercial with the cigarettes come up to cool? And there was a guy walking up these steps coming like from the dungeons or something, and finally coming up to the steps and saying, coming up to cool. That's what we have done. We are
Uh-huh.
climbing those ladders up to being cool and
Uh-huh.
comfortable with ourselves and learning that we can be those things that we're desiring to be. We don't need anybody to validate our capacities of
Hmm.
extending ourselves beyond the norm. And it's just a blessing that we can do it now and support teams that are available around us to help us to succeed. I was so blessed to be from a family that was supportive in
Hmm.
all our efforts and still are capacity supported in growing and to be those things that we're desiring to be.
And
And
so that's so key. Maybe you could speak a little bit on that, like even with the sisters that you have. You seen you have a lot in terms of having a team. How even when we all have discord,
yeah,
I just wished I had those sisters to have that though.
yeah,
But
yeah,
even that, creating a safe place,
yeah,
having a safe place,
yeah,
having even someone to disagree with you, constructively, is a beautiful thing. You see, I have one or two people that I truly count on that I've been knowing since uh, second grade. I think one second grade and one sixth grade,
mhm,
and that they have over the years just tell you like it is. They're not going to fix it up. They're
yeah,
not going to whatever, because they are truly there for you. You
yeah.
see, it's for you to be a better person.
That's
So my question for you is then, for women and for us to discuss how to seek that out, whether you're in a corporate environment, whether you're in a church, how do you, in your family, how do you begin to, as a woman, realizing that, see, unconsciously, women who we've been talking about what you spoke about being on the lower end of the on the totem pole, or so to speak, or not being visible or acknowledged for what it is that you do contribute. And then what do you do to yourself? How do you handle and create for yourself a safety?
That's true. I've had to grow up mentally and understanding my role as a woman, my role as a mother, my role as a wife or significant, and that's in those essence and what it is that I desired and finding that balance and what they're desiring. It takes time. It takes a lot of communication and having those dialogues, and oftentimes unpleasant because sometimes you have to walk away from the table when you don't want to. And but that's okay because it allows you to regroup and reinvent yourself in such a way that you're knowing the things that you're desiring. And God give us that gift too of discerning spirit that lets you know you're on the right track or not. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, we get deferred all the time for whatever the reason may be. But don't give up. Don't give lose hope. Continue to work toward what you're desiring to do. Even if you have to detour and go in another direction, that's perfectly fine. It's not that you're falling short or you place yourself on a time frame and saying you got to do this in 60, 90 days or 10 years or whatever. My life, even now at my age, then I'm shifting again to another area of interest for me. And it took me a whole lifetime to get where I am now. And I tell women, don't ever lose hope. Don't lose your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Continue to strive forward. Surround yourself with people that are encouraging, who are supportive, and not just the ones that are the friends, the yes friends. You need to know friends too,
Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm.
and be able to accept something that's not what you're thinking. It's not on your path, but at least to give you a time to assess where you're going, what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Feel it. And like as I said, my sister and I are totally different. My sister is an educator. My sister is the one who calls Denise and says, "Look, I need you to do this."
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you're the oldest. You're supposed to be telling me, but it doesn't always work like we think. Correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I was so blessed to have so many wonderful aunts and uncles, and especially the ladies when we sat around in my mom's house or talking about life situations that were very uncomfortable for them,
Mm-hmm.
rape, job situations, being a female, not being able to do certain things during their day.
Mm-hmm.
Those things stuck with me and saying, you can do better.
Mm-hmm.
You can break the odds. It's going to take more work, more
Mm-hmm.
effort to
Mm-hmm.
get things done, and you see that often. I see it in ministry, and I can't think of the judge who's recently died, Ruth Bader, RBG Brinker. I admired her because she took a journey that was totally different than most women. Although I did not know her, I watched her career, I read about her career and the changes that she had to deal with as an individual being an attorney. And
Mm-hmm.
even though she had a degree, as a lawyer, she still could not get positions that was of
Mm-hmm.
that degree. She can teach it, but they didn't want her to practice.
Yes, yes.
But
It's just.
she had someone to open the doors for her. And her first thing in the court was helping a white guy to gain permission to receive funds to deal with his mother who was ill.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed the dynamics for everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the doors began to open more and more. And
Mm-hmm.
it takes people like that who gives of themselves without time, just regardless of what the time it takes to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have that passion to stick with things. And that's something I've learned along the way, to stick with it. I am the person I call ADD. I like short projects to work with them, get them active, get them rolling, and move on to something else. I'm not always the talker. I like to see it get done.
Yes,
Uh,
yes,
and,
yes. That's true. That's true.
and that's me. That's what I do.
Mhm.
If I'm on a project I'm involved in, it's not just going to be conversation. And I'm saying
Mhm.
it come into reality, making a
Mhm.
fruition, if you want to call it that way. But
Mhm.
we all have those different things. So we all have those different gifts. But when we pull them all together and working toward a common goal, that's when we are powerful. Not on the
Mhm.
sidelines as individuals
That's mhm.
critical of each other,
That's so.
but trying to say, how can we help each other be that person? It may not be your person at that time,
Mhm. Mhm.
but later on, you may get to be elevated up into whatever it is, your goal, that gift, your the things that you're striving to be. It really does take a community to make that happen
To do that.
and to do
Mhm.
it. And women, God, we have to learn to love each other and making those things work for us. Instead of tearing each other down, how about lifting each other
So
up?
there's a theory. See, there's a theory, and of course we know that from slavery. But there's a theory that society in general, in the history of society, has actually always taken something as a carrot to get one person to actually pit against another. So, but what they've found now is when, and I share with people the little story about the two girls. And so they teach many tribes in Africa as well as the American Indian that I've read about. It's not that it's not anywhere else, it's just that I've only read depicting these stories. But this one is about the two little girls in Africa, where the man went to Africa and he said, I have all of these, showed him jewelry and prizes and everything like that. And he said, whoever gets to this tree first gets the prize.
Mm-hmm.
And so the little girl, their family had taught them that uh, when you fall, everybody in this village will fall because we all depend on each other. And so the two little girls looked at each other and they started running to the tree. Well, the man had his mouth open. He just couldn't understand it because they both got to the tree at the same time. And
Perfect.
they held hands and got to the tree. And what they did was they just took the prizes and shared them among each other. And so everybody, and so this is what I tell people for working together. The prize is the same. So the question is, are you trying to take the whole thing, or are you trying to help everybody in your community
Right.
share in what it is that you're doing? You
Absolutely.
see, you see. And so just what you're saying, if we practice thinking that way, then our actions generally tend to follow. So a man thinketh, so is he. You see.
That's
Hmm.
that's true. I always admired and watched the Williams sisters, the tennis players, the
Yes.
Venus. I said, man, they have the right idea working together. When one won, even when they played against each other, there was no division there. They were very supportive of each other. They put their funds to similar usage. Everything was one with them.
Hmm.
And I watched how they both were elevated in their professions, and
Hmm.
how they've gone in different directions. One with the wife, now married with children. The other one still single, but they ventured off to other areas. But they're still encouraging to all the new persons or new ladies that's coming into their
Hmm.
area of tennis that many years that Black girls could not be a part of or didn't have the finances to even go in that area. And
Hmm.
now look at what's happening, and
And
look
I
at
think I read an article, Pastor Caulfield, that they, when they're tutoring the young people, they're giving them mentoring, I should say, They're giving them tips about how not to fall prey to the things that they
Right.
were short in. It was some newspaper article I read, and that they were actually bringing them on and telling them what you said earlier, that what we need more of is people to share their stories and look at the outcomes and look at how to prevent moving in that area or having those difficulties.
Absolutely, because there will be challenges. Period. That's just a way of life, and because of our gender and the pigment of our skin, it's gonna cause greater challenges. But don't allow that to keep you from following your dreams.
I
Yeah,
don't walk around with that as
that's right.
something as a limitation.
That's
I
right.
wonder if we could use what we're talking about, but look at, okay, then if we're looking at the connection between women, what's the message? What are some of the messages that would lead a person to become stronger or lead a person to become, like we said, don't give up, more persistent? What are some of the messages from the women, any of the women in the Bible or women in our community, that we could put together and say, you know, it's something similar about this? It's a thread in here that we need to grab hold to.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share any of those that you recall?
And of course, because I don't have my notes right at hand, um, Ruth and her Ruth and the mother-in-law. I loved how they worked together. Now we know the mother-in-law husband died, and then left the sons and their wives, and then all the sons died. Her sons died, and left all the her daughter-in-laws without. And she said, "Look, I need for you to go back to your homelands." But one of them said, "No, I'm staying with you." And because she stayed with her and she connected, and of course, during those times too, she had a lot, but because she was female, she could not hold ownership to the property that her husband had.
Wow, yeah, that's right. That's right.
So she went back to a cousin in Moab and told him, "Look, here's a woman for you," so to speak, just placed her in a position to meet him. And because he realized they were relatives, so as they came and asked him for support, he gave them favors, saying, when any of the wheat or stuff fall on the grounds, don't pick them up, let them pick it up, they need it. And because of that, there was a bond, a relationship that had developed between the man and the woman, the daughter in law. And because of that, and because his compassion for lifting that, the relationships up between the cousin and now this new lady that he was sorting after, became important and began to speak out. And because of the relationship, there was a certain amount of trust that had developed between them, a certain amount of love and respect that
Mm-hmm.
had come out of that relationship. And because they worked as a team, look at what it brought to them. Again, a safe place
See.
where
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have to worry about the finances or where
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have to live or how they're going to be treated. Then they were back to what I call royalty basics in life, the food and shelter, and then somebody to love. What if they had not worked together as a team?
Mm-hmm.
Where
Mm-hmm.
would they have been?
Right. Mm-hmm.
In that journey. So it's something. And then look at Rahab, the prostitute, the lineage of Jesus Christ. Rahab said, "Okay, if you save my family, I will protect your people." And did she not? She saved her family for protecting those men that had came to
Mm-hmm.
town. And because of her connections, a prostitute
Mm-hmm.
connecting people together
Mm-hmm.
as a companion of the flesh, but a companion of the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual development.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, look at what happened. Her family was saved. Her family was preserved. And then look at Mary, Jesus' mother and herself. Now, when Mary came on the scene, Mary was single. Mary was pregnant. Mary probably getting talked about in the community because she's with a child. And then
Mhm.
when Joseph wanted to put her away secretly,
Yes.
and the angel came and spoke to Joseph and said, "Look, this child she's with, that's of God." His dynamics changed then, and he began to be more supportive, even though there may have been questions initially. But when God touched your spirit, regardless of whatever it is, don't let man ever asunder it or pull it apart. You stay
Mhm.
with him and building that commitment, that
Mhm.
connection, and
Mhm.
allow God to do what's going to be done. That's all
Mhm.
I give him glory, but definitely you along the way.
Mhm. Okay, that is just so you have really said some words that bring us to healing. And when we then what I just want to do is to just kind of end up with we've talked about a lot. We've talked about the trust, the commitment, the teaming, the support, the mentoring, and all of those things that takes us to healing. And so then if we would just give a few um, ideas about the search for healing. Okay, because I think if we could just give the audience, our Facebook audience and our podcast audience, um, some ideas, leave them with some ideas. Mhm.
Um, First of all, you're going to have to let your guards down.
Mhm.
That was Denise. That pride gets you every time. Um, and allowing yourself to test the waters on what a good relationship is.
Mhm.
Some will not be what you want, and some will be. In fact, you will find fewer friends than you think that's going to be with you for the duration of your life or for a given season.
Mhm.
And don't be afraid to open up and have that conversation with those.
Mhm.
It doesn't always happen overnight, but there are all those telltale signs, and I think those telltale signs are the ones that you don't hear your stuff back in the street again. And I'm not saying disclose everything, but small things. If you're hearing it, you know that's not that person that you need to be hanging with.
Mhm. Mhm.
But somebody who also gonna lift you up and encourage you in your deepest time and say, I got your back. Or
Mhm.
say, come over, you can crash at my house. I won't share. Here's the key to my house. I'll be gone. Or you can, or from there, this over here is your space. Take
Mhm.
your time to allow your wounds to be healed
Mhm. Mhm.
and have those late night conversations over a glass of wine
Yes. Yes.
and just allow you to be yourself. And when you wake up in the morning, you find and still that same relationship is there. No condemnation, no
Right.
backbiting,
Yes.
no.
And it remains there. It remains right there.
That's
Mhm.
exactly right. We'll
That's
go
the that's the
stays
thing.
right there. Then
Mhm.
you know you got it. And let me tell you, even in my day, I have 5 fingers on my finger on my hands. I
Mhm.
still have less than 5 people on that same hand that I'm close with
Mhm. You
because of
know,
watching.
we've discussed it, but you've really brought some really topics that we should follow up on sometime in the near future. I want to thank you, Pastor Denise Caulfield of the Wesley Foundation at University of Houston and Associate Pastor at Riverside United Methodist Church. I want to thank you for being with us today. And I want to remember and remind our audience to please go to wrc-houston.com, sign up for our mental health coaching class, for our next international mental health coaching class. If you're an organization, email us or go on our website and sign up and register so you can receive a link to participate and also share your organizational strengths and needs to benefit those in the community. And we're going to look forward to seeing you, same place, same time, same station, next week, if God willing. I want to say renew beliefs, rebuild faith, and reconnect families and communities. For
Mhm.
it's not the circumstances we meet, it is the manner in which we respond that determines health, happiness, and success. And I'll see you all next week. And download Culture Vision TV app so you can see us at 7 p.m. on Tuesday evenings, each Tuesday evening. And you can get all this type of information. And I'll look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. Have a good one.